We're down in the corner of the property where there's still like extant sagebrush populations, which is really nice. And I know I've shared this a few times before, but it makes me really happy to see this, and really optimistic because they're just doing their thing. Nobody's been doing anything back here really except the creatures and critters running through and doing their thing, so that's cool. But the other reason I came back here is because I know that between these plants, especially as it gets thicker, there's a lot more biocrust action, like moss, excuse me, moss and lichen and that kind of stuff. So I've been trying to find some good patches of it. So we've been getting a good amount of rain in the last week or so, and this has really reinvigorated this biocrust action. And it's a really important part of our ecosystem, and I'm not going to claim I'm like expert on it or anything, but it does help with erosion control, and it does a lot, especially the lichen, to weather. Oh, whoa, who has acorns? Anyway, the lichen in particular does a lot to like weather and break down rocks, as far as I understand. So this gray stuff here is a type of lichen. I don't know which kind, but I'm pretty sure there's some good patches a little further along. There's it's a game trail, not a people trail because the brush is still there. Just gonna let this plane fly over real quick. So one of my objectives is to figure out in the long term, and maybe this might be 5 years down the line or whatever, but figure out if there's a way to propagate this, especially the lichen, because it seems to help prevent or slow the spread of some of the invasive grasses. And this right here, all this stuff is an invasive grass called bulbous bluegrass, I'm pretty sure. So it's all over the place. It's the primary grass on the property right now, and someday I hope to change that. Oh, you can even see, like, look at these little buggers. It's that grass. Anyway, I'm really hopeful that if I could like get this established, it would help preclude some of the invasive grasses we have. And obviously it's not like 100%, and I'm just absolutely speculating. But I would love to have this stuff instead of invasive pokey grasses all over the place. So let's see if we can wander along and find a more obvious example of it. Oh, Ava fits on the game trail, don't ya? Ooh, here's a nice rock. So this one's all peppered with different kinds of lichen. So it looks to me, and again, not an expert, looks like there's 3 or 4 different species maybe on there. So there's this type, that might be a different type, that might be different, I'm not really totally sure. So I love seeing these. Oh, here we go. This is what I was looking for. These are the little fruiting bodies of the lichen. I don't know that my phone is gonna do a great job of picking that up, but let's see if we can get in there a little bit. So lichen is like a symbiont of algae and mushrooms or something. I might be wrong. Definitely Google that. But they create these fruiting bodies to release their propagules. And my thought is, if I can collect these guys, maybe I can spread them around a little bit. So there's lots of cool different species out here. And obviously this moss, that's pretty ubiquitous. I would say it's in some spots a lot more obvious than the lichen. And it just keeps going. So if we kind of zoom out, all the green on the ground through here is moss. And maybe it isn't as activated as I imagined it would be with the rain we've been getting, but there's a nice little patch over there. And it's just all over the place under these sagebrush. The other cool thing is that these sagebrush are old enough and established enough that they have all this lichen growing on their branches and stems and trunks and that kind of thing, which is just really beautiful. Let's see if we can find some more. Now I'm invested. So this is a great spot. I think this is the area I was thinking of. All this gray stuff on the ground is lichen. And oh yeah, check it out. Excellent. So bulbous bluegrass, great. Some cottonwood leaves or something. But then down here we have all these fruiting bodies from the lichen. And that is just so cool. And there's a whole wall of them. If we can move along here. And they're growing straight down into this game path, so all of this is being colonized by lichen, which makes me think it's totally doable to just like spread it around. There's even a clump already broken off over here. I wonder if I tripped on that. These tiny little friends. Hey, Ava. Oh, thanks, bud. But yeah, not a lot of farm content to be had this time of year for me. There's not as much super visually striking stuff to share, but this is the kind of stuff that I kind of geek out over, and it's on my never-ending list of things to learn more about. But it would be so cool if we just had little bunch grasses, native ones, which I think that is, not this bulbous bluegrass stuff, and then just peppered through with lichen and moss. But yeah, all this gray stuff, these gray patches on the ground, even into this game trail here, it's all lichen. Love it. You could like it, you could love it. And then it kind of peters out. So we just had a big storm come through and dump a lot of rain over the last 24 hours. So I'm curious if this will perk up even more, and the moss will probably jump up a bit, especially because it's staying fairly warm. But we've got this nice, I think it's a type of club moss, but again, I'm not an expert on this, so take that with a grain of salt. And you can see those little hair-like looking things poking up. Those are the fruiting bodies of the moss. It's not what they're called. They carry spores or something like that, but it's getting ready to spread, which is great. That's what we want to see. I really love the contrast of the sagebrush leaves against the dark, wet bark after it's rained, because it makes it a lot more kind of visually stunning. And they look really gray right now in this light, so they've put on their winter coat kind of, and they tend to drop some of their leaves but keep some through the winter. But I love it. This is so great. The other thing that makes me really happy out here is that there's some natural recruitment happening. So meaning there are baby sagebrushes coming up, and a fair number of them making it. So I have no idea how old these are, but I would guess several years at this point to have gotten to this stage. There's even one with, looks like, I don't know what that is. Maybe it was part of another plant stuck to it. But there's, I don't know, a dozen plants just in this one area. And that's super encouraging to see, because a lot of them are just this stage, like this age. To the left there is a smaller one, so I don't know how fast these grow in the wild. The ones that I started from seed are growing really fast, but it's because they're getting a lot of extra water from me trying to keep them alive in pots. But it's really encouraging that there are multiple ages of sagebrush out here, because that means they are recruiting themselves and growing on by themselves, and spreading. So there's another little guy down here, and that, it's growing in a tussock of old dead bunch grass. Do you see that? So it like created the organic matter, and then the sagebrush took advantage. I don't know. But it's all surrounded by this nice moss. It's quite the little, it's like a little tree on top of a hill kind of. But I'm pretty ecstatic that I see this happening, because it makes me really sad when I see ecosystems where everything is the same age, because it's either like it had been replanted, or who knows, like sometimes that happens naturally, maybe because of a fire or something, but generally, as far as I understand, we should be seeing multiple ages of everything, because that means things are growing and recruiting and propagating themselves, and that there's a future for them. I still need to come out and collect more sagebrush seeds, so all of these little nubbins at the end here of these branches are flowering stalks, and then these tiny little things in there are the actual flowers, and even tinier than that are the actual seeds, but everything is pretty wet from the rain, so once the rain has gone away a little bit more, I could collect it and let it dry, but I just don't want to. I really don't. And I did collect a bag already this year, so if worst comes to worst, I do have some, but I'd really like to come down here and collect from 20 or 30 different plants to get a good array of the diversity that we have on this property, at least. But there's like a mid-age one, so we've got this big old slumping one. You can kind of see it's just crawling up along, kind of, and then again, different ages around it, and it seems like they're spreading uphill, which is they're like re-establishing themselves into the area that used to be orchard to some degree, and the yarrow especially is doing that, so it's getting closer on that. This whole slope here is peppered with yarrow plants, and as a like early stage species to colonize disturbed areas, that makes me really hopeful for what this could look like, especially if I jumpstart some plants and add things along in the next 5 to 10 to 20 years. And also that this moss is here, so even up above where it's mostly just invasive grasses, there is still moss peppered through. Anyway, I'm a little tired. You might hear that. There's still moss peppered through in here, so it's still recruiting itself, it's still spreading, it's still expanding, and hopefully the lichen will follow, and we'll see more of that. And I bet there's more lichen in here than I realize, and I just don't know what I'm looking at, but it makes me really happy and encouraged for what we could do in terms of restoring some of the sagebrush habitat further up this hill in areas that we're not going to be using for the farm or anything like that. There's another really solid little game trail going through here. I think they're going up to get the water that's in Ava's little swimming pool up by the garden, but there's also this other sweet rock covered in lichen